Yo yo with the froyo, y'all. It is Big John, and we're coming back at you with a Call of Duty commentary. I am gonna put Call of Duty over this video, so I can officially call it a Call of Duty commentary. But you'll notice there I said we, and that is because today I have a guest on with me, and that guest is COLLINMECRAZY.
Hello, how's it going? Dude, that beginning was so good.
So I've got COLLINMECRAZY here with us. We are, I think, pretty similar minded in the sense that we might not have the exact same experiences in life, but we're really good at calling each other out in reality. You know, all the advice he gives is pretty solid, and so I wanted to have him on today because today's topic is charisma, or as the hip kids call it, RIZZ.
Yeah, they call it RIZZ.
So the big question today is, what is charisma, and should it be something that we're even interested in? And I mean, beyond the sense that like you're trying to rizz up your level 5 Gyats, but instead is charisma something that we need to implement into our daily lives? So, you know, I can definitely say that I think charisma is not something that people are born with. I know that I, growing up, did not have any charisma. But once I invested in learning how to be charismatic, learning how to be sociable, I have earned, you know, kind of my own points of charisma, just moment by moment, going through my day-to-day life and pursuing being sociable.
Right, yeah, definitely relate on the same wavelength. Like whenever I was through elementary school, I had friends here and there. It wasn't until middle school I met my best friend, and we just hit it off. And that was like the only guy I talked to for several years straight. So every other person that would come into my life, I knew him, but we never hung out as much as I would with my best friend. And eventually, when I got to high school, I got the trio, I like to
Yeah.
call it, my two original best friends that I will definitely invite to my wedding whenever I get married, and probably have his best man. One of them is his best man, and yeah, it took a long time to really like open up as like a person. I feel like throughout, especially like middle school, I was so quiet. I would just sleep in class. I wasn't really like always that comfortable with a lot of the people in my classrooms and my peers, like you said. And it wasn't until somewhere like the middle of high school, I think my brain just like clicked one day, and it was like, you know what? I don't care anymore. Like, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna be myself, and just see who sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And once I did that, the floodgates just like opened. Like, I was making friends left and right. I was making too many friends. It started getting annoying. I was like, I'm a very like personable guy where I like to sit and have my personal time. It got
Yeah.
to the point where I was like, dude, I need like not 18 people to text me at one time in the same time of the day. It's like it got out of hand. So don't go overboard with it. But yeah,
Did you know that
I don't know what.
you know,
Yeah.
it sounds to me kind of like your C-3PO in Star Wars when they go to Endor. Endor is the name of that planet.
There you go.
It sounds like you C-3PO in that episode when the Ewoks find C-3PO and he's all golden, so they praise him as his god, and he's just like, "What are you doing? Why are you guys doing this to me?" You know, you got all these friends here like trying to communicate with you, and you're like, "What are we doing today, leader? Like, let's start a cult, and you can be the leader." And you're like, "Well, okay, hold on."
Yeah, like whoa, hold on a minute. It's kind of funny you say that too, because like throughout school, I've been told that I was a leader, and I'm like, dude, I don't like telling people what to do. I guess maybe naturally, or just it's just became that, but
Dude,
maybe it's a
Colin's
skill
over
I've
here
learned.
like people are like, "You're a leader," and you're like, "Quit following me."
Yes, get away from me, freaking
Get away from
freaks.
me. Oh no.
Freaks of nature. No, I enjoy it. Just sometimes it gets a little overwhelming, and I like to have my free time.
You know, I think that there's a common misconception that charisma means that you have to be the most popular kid around. And that's not true at all. I mean, charisma is more about how you can be sociable and comfortable with communicating with others, with networking with others, even if it's in your own niche. You know, what comes to mind is like, you know, you and I and other kids that I'm sure everybody's seen at school or in some scenario where there's like this small group of little nerds in a corner and they never branch out. Charisma is not just targeted at the most popular jock that walks around or, the best looking fella. Quite honestly, I think that some of the, 3 out of 10 or 4 out of 10 guys that we've seen with these 10 out of 10 ladies, a lot of times that can be attributed to the fact that they went and learned how to be sociable and be charismatic so that they can, land these relationships with these, women that are of high value in society. I think that's a misconception that you can't be charismatic, you can't be well liked, and you can't be outgoing if you fall into a category of being a nerd or a geek or just some type of super niche setting. Oftentimes, being niche is what makes you stand out and makes people notice you more. So,
It's funny because, like, as an adult, you definitely don't make as many friends as you usually do as kids because everybody's a different age, you got different backgrounds, and usually you're moving around a good bit. And it's funny because, like, one of my coworkers at Domino's, he's like 4 years younger than me, and I invited him to my place that I just moved into. He's looking at all my stuff. He's like, "Dude, you're like cool." And I'm like, "What? Like, what do you mean? I just own stuff. Like, what do you mean?" He's
yeah.
like, "Just the stuff that you have." Like, I wear like some fancy little socks that I have. They're like little Sour Patch Kid socks.
Mhm.
And he was just commenting on that. I'm like, "Dude, you just own like cool stuff, and like it makes you look cool." I'm like, "This is just me being me."
Yeah.
So sometimes you don't even have to try. It's just getting out there and being sociable with people, and you never know who sticks. Really, it's pretty fun to. It surprises you. I mean, for me, it definitely surprises me when someone says something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that one of the best ways to start off relationships where you meet a coworker and you're like, "You know what, you're cool enough. I want you to come over to my house because after talking to you long enough, I feel like you're not a serial killer." I think that one of the best ways to like kind of initiate some of that connection is through humor. When I was taking French in my sophomore year of high school, there's this word that I will never forget for pool. And the word for pool in French is piscine. Um, and so she made a joke. It was a terrible joke. It's me in a class with a bunch of freshmen, and I'm the only sophomore in there. And she says, "Here's how you're going to remember this word. You never want to go pissing in the pool." And she said it in this like thick French accent. And dude, the first thing I did was bust out laughing. Like, I did not care. I did not find this joke funny, but I fake laughed with my whole heart. Everybody turns and looks at me, and this teacher, everybody's looking at me because they're just like, "There's no way this kid is laughing at this joke," and I am just like guttural belly laughing while everybody's looking at me. I just, whoo, dang, that's a good one. I'm never gonna forget that word, and I didn't, but not because of the joke, but because that was probably one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever done or put myself through.
Yeah.
But while everybody's looking at me, I look up at the front of the room and nobody is noticing the teacher. But this teacher, this is little short, stumpy lady. She has the biggest smile on her face that she has that has ever seen. She was trying her own attempt at being charismatic, taking a leap of faith, and she made a joke. And so I noticing that right there, I immediately was like, "You know what? I'm going to affirm this effort and I'm going to laugh." Whether I thought it was funny or not, I just decided right then and there, I'm going to laugh. And from that moment on, I was her favorite student that she's ever encountered. And
Nice.
I'm terrible at French, but taking that leap of faith to affirm her effort and charisma allowed me to open up a door to where I became her favorite student. And so in doing that, it allowed me to where like I could be late to class, I could have missed a class, I could have not turned in homework at all. And it was always, "Well, if you turn it in tomorrow, I'll give you full credit." Everybody else, turn it in tomorrow for half credit. But for me, turn it in tomorrow full credit. Actually, don't turn
Yeah, I
it
was gonna
in.
ask.
I'll give you an A,
I was gonna ask, did it help with like grades? Like probably like
Yeah.
lenient on grading.
If you
Right.
haven't developed a relationship with somebody and they go out on a limb trying to make a joke and you are quick to laugh, right? You're quick to help them feel clever for making a witty comment. That is an opportunity for you to grow charisma. That's an opportunity for you to build relationships. And I think that that positivity that comes with affirming somebody's effort or, or their attempt at humor or even making an attempt in humor yourself can really lead to elevating your ability to have charisma and to be charismatic.
I think that's such a core part of like me, for instance, where I'll do a little jab here and there, even out in like public. Like literally today, I went to go pick up my new glasses, which I was so excited about, and the lady I was picking them up from, I mean, we sat down, I was testing them out, and like throughout the whole time, I'm just making little comments about, I'm comparing the glasses I used to buy online last year that were terrible. Like they were so bad. And I'm like, how do you guys, I gave you the prescription, you guys mailed it to me, and like these are not even close to what they're supposed to be. And she's
Right.
laughing at that. And then she notices my hat because I was wearing a Domino's hat, and I was talking about, I work at Domino's. We have different uniforms, so I can't wear this hat. She thought I was just wearing it to like rep the the company, but I was like, no, I actually work there. Like I deliver.
Yeah.
And she's like, why aren't you wearing your other hat? And I'm like, because it sucks. It's terrible. Those new hats that we have are like super flat and they don't fit my head.
Hmm.
It's hard to explain, but they're just terrible built hats. And she's like, thanks for giving me a laugh today. I'm like, you know what? You're welcome. I didn't even try. It's
Yeah.
just kind of how it goes. And that stuff is great. And it just comes with time. I think if you're, really young, you're in like middle school and you feel shy about a lot of things, very anxious, you're getting new emotions coming in. You don't have to force it. Like, don't force it. Always just know that just keep yourself, on your toes every now and again. Improv is like a great way of opening up to people and learning how people work and how people perceive you. I think thinking on the spot is almost like a skill that I have that I really enjoy. And yeah, adding some humor, some comedic relief always helps. I feel like it
Hmm.
never really fails.
Well, you also brought up improv, which
Hmm.
reminds me of a thing that happened to me my senior year of high school. My senior year of high school, I was, searching around for scholarships because I had to figure out how I was going to pay to go to college. And I got a scholarship with the I don't want to mess up the name of this. It was a scholarship with the Louisiana Carpenters Union. They were handing out a $2,000 scholarship to like four students who could write about their experience with the union. So the thing is, my grandpa was in the union, and so to qualify for this, you had to have a family member that was a part of the union that was either immediate family or had to be like a grandparent or an uncle, right? So I just went ahead and I wrote up a little essay about why I needed this scholarship, why how the union had impacted me, and all that kind of stuff, even before I was in it. And so I wrote up a little essay about it's provided for my family and it's provided for my family's family, and like I've had a ton of people come through here, and so I'm humbled with the opportunity to even apply for this scholarship. So it's just kind of for me, it's just getting money, but you say things to be generous about it, right?
Yeah,
And
the scholarships were, yeah, a lot of fluff. I'd say a lot of fluff in those
yeah,
ones.
it was a lot of fluff, but my scholarship won, or I won the scholarship with my essay.
Nice.
And we had to drive down to New Orleans and go to this really fancy conference center to receive this scholarship award. And there three people showed up of the four winners. One of them just didn't show up. I think they still gave him the award, so good for him. If I knew I didn't have to show up, I probably wouldn't have at that time. But I showed up, and I'm there, and they announce the winners. They call they call all our names out, and then they have us come up to the stage to receive the award. So I go up to the stage and I'm going to receive the award, and when the guy hands me the award, they shake the hand, take a picture, right? So kind of like you graduate in high school, you get your diploma from the principal, shake his hand, take a picture. So I just did that with the leader of the Carpenters Union there, and then he looks at me and he said, "So give us a little speech." And I was like, "Oh
Oh,
shit, okay." Um,
okay.
let's do that. So I walk up to this podium and I've got all these, like, you know, to me, these are people that I'm never going to see ever again. But like to my family who's been in the union, these are like the big wigs, you know, these are the guys. So I'm like, oh man, I can't mess this up. Well, my grandpa was so pleased that I got this award and everything. He showed up to this thing and we're riding up the elevator in this really fancy building to go to this before we even get to the conference. And he makes the comment, while we're going up, he said, this feels like winning the lottery, doesn't it? And my initial, like, I just said to my grandpa, I was like, yeah, you know, and I chuckled a little bit. Because this is my grandpa, I'm not gonna like be combative. But I was like, this is $2,000. This isn't like, you know, I'm not winning the Mega Millions here, buddy.
Not life changing. Yeah, let's chill out.
Yeah, but I was like, you know what, you know, this is his attempt at making a joke. So kind of like my French teacher, but now my grandpa's doing it. So I took it or whatever, went with it. Cut back to, okay, it's time to get up there and make, you know, and give a speech about receiving this award. And the first thought I had to my head, what kind of audience is this? You know? And thinking about, okay, my grandpa has been in the union since he was 18 years old. He's been shaped by these people, so he probably has a very similar personality to a lot of these guys here. So I took, you know, a little bit of a guess in that, and I went out on a limb, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to repeat his joke. And so when I got up there, I was like, guys, this feels like winning the lottery. Dude, the whole room erupted in laughter.
Oh,
they loved it. They ate it up. And I was like, this isn't even my joke. I would never make this joke, but my grandpa said it, and these are his people, so I'm going to steal his stuff. Dude, the whole room erupted in laughter. I looked down at my grandpa. He's got the biggest grin on his face, but it's kind of like one of those little devious grins where he's like, that's my joke. That's my joke, you know? And then I went in and I was like, guys, this is amazing. And then I kind of, you know, reiterated what I wrote in my essay, where I was like, my grandpa's been in it, my dad's been in it, my uncles have been in it, and I'm not in it, but now I get to take this scholarship and I'm going to go apply it to, you know, go get my degree. But now, just like my father and my grandpa and my uncles, I'm able to say that the union is helping me get to where I want to be in life, because anytime they talk about how they got where they wanted to be in life, they talk about the skills and the support they had with the union. Dude, the guys ate that up. That's that fluff, you know, that's like, nice. Oh my gosh. So I'm really, you know, I butter these guys up, thank them for it, make a joke. Afterwards, every single guy that was in between me and the exit to getting out of that building shook my hand, because they were like, you are an outstanding young man. I really like the grit, you know, the cut of your chin or jib or whatever it is. And that was able to set me apart, because the other two contestants or whatever that won that got up there, they said, I'm going to school for neuroscientology. Thank you. And then they just got off the stage. You know what I'm saying? And yeah. And that, dude, I put them to shame too, because I went up first. So like they followed up with garbage.
Sometimes you think first is the worst, but honestly it's the best, because you're the one that sets the tone. And if you got something good like that in your back pocket, man, like it embarrasses the rest of the people when it comes to presentations. Yeah, I would always volunteer to go first. I'm like, me first. I'm getting it out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, I was able to do that. And then, you know, I still, whenever I go to like a union, because my uncles teach at the union in New Orleans, and every time I go there, they're like, oh, how are you doing? How's school going? And I'm like, I dropped out, but you know, and they're always like, that's okay, you know, because they had that initial interaction with me. They saw my charisma when I accepted that award, and that first impression has set the tone for this entire, like, these people in this industry that I'm not even a part of. Like, I have nothing to do with the union, but every time they see me, they're like, you're that kid. And I'm like, yeah, you know? Yeah. And so that's set the tone for, you know, being able to stand out. I think that if you can learn to improvise or just be yourself, like on the spot, you know, kind of use that context around you to do stuff, like make a joke that you know works well in a crowd or something like that. You know, I think charisma shows up the strongest when stakes are high, you know, and then you know, if you have that charisma, that means that you're showing up in that environment to be a leader there, you know?
Yeah, big time. That like whole presentation reminded me of one of like the most anxious points I've had in college. I for some reason had to take for my degree a computer science degree because we're all nerds and we're all not that sociable, I guess, at that level. I was kind
Yeah.
of I was free flowing at this point, so I'm like I'm probably one of the most social guys here.
Hmm.
But we had to take a public speaking class and it was rough,
Mm.
at least like for everybody. So like the first few months you're doing very formal written papers and then you're presenting them at a podium in front of all these people you don't know. It's usually just classmates, they're all the same age usually, but everybody's in a different degree because this is like an elective, so I'm like I don't know what you guys are interested in or what you do, but it's not a very sociable environment. Like
Yeah.
everybody's pretty quiet usually most of the time. You're just presenting and listening, maybe asking a few questions. And luckily, the teacher in that class was really young, so we had a day where I forgot. I like woke up this morning and was like one morning while I was going to the class, and I'm like, "What are we doing today?" I don't remember. I walk in, and the teacher's like, "All right, we're doing improv today," and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like my brain started panicking immediately. I was like, "Oh my god, this is scary." So she's like, "I'm gonna give you a card. It's gonna have two things on it. You gotta put those two things together," or it was like a phrase or something. And she's like, "You get 5 minutes to come up with a speech about this thing on the card." I'm like, "Oh god." So I'm like, I think I'm one of the first people to go.
Ooh.
And my card, when I'm in the hallway, I'm like shaking. I'm like, "Oh, this sucks." I'm looking at my card and it says, "Talk about three things from your closet." And I was like, three things. I was like, this is perfect. Honestly, probably the perfect thing I could talk about because my closet at home, since I went to college in a different city in a different state, I was talking about my closet from home, which is a wreck. There is
Mm.
so much crap in that closet. I still need to clean it out. I joke with my mom all the time about cleaning that closet up, but it's got a lot of junk in there. And I was like, actually, this is kind of perfect. So like 5 minutes I'm spending like thinking about it. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna pick like three things I can think of that are in there, and I'm just gonna go for it. And I come up with jokes. I'm like talking about like it's dirty, it's messy, you don't want to look at it, but here's what's in my closet. And I think I talked about like old toys I had that my mom kept, and she's like, "You're gonna use this when you're or when you have babies." I'm like, "Mom, okay, like I get that, like save money on toys. They could be expensive, but also like childhood memories
Hmm.
and all that." I think I talked about like old clothes I don't wear, they don't fit me in there. I'd probably stretch out because I'm like twice the size I used to be when I had those clothes.
Yeah.
And then whatever else is in there. And I felt like I got an A+. I was like, wow, that was
What?
great. I
Yeah.
didn't stumble, I didn't mumble. Um, I was really just like it was like I was on a stage with no podium to hide behind. I could just walk around if I wanted to, and it felt great. And it was nice because I feel like a lot of the professors that I've had throughout like the computer science department are very serious. They could be very
Hmm.
stern. And so having like a younger professor and like a younger audience to talk to and try to joke with felt really natural. And we did that twice. So like the second time I don't remember what that prompt was, but I killed that one as well. And I was like, dude, this is way better than writing a whole paper, reading word for word, and like trying to focus on the paper and being serious. Like this was so much
Yeah.
better. So yeah, that like it did create pressure, but honestly, like the relief was being in the act. Like when I'm doing
Hmm.
it and when I'm saying it, I don't know, something about it. Like you just got to do it one or two times and get that pressure. And most of the time, I would say most people come out on top, like pretty well.
Unless you're like Michael Scott and you pull out a gun every single time.
Oops.
It's like, okay, the topic is a closet. Okay, well, I go into my closet and here's a Glock.
I don't want to be here.
Just stick them up, everybody in the audience.
Oh, that's so good.
Dude, there's that. I love your comment about the. I liked having a young professor. It's just so easy to improv when you have such a young, hot female professor standing on the
Young
podium
Hunt.
to impress.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
Then
It
you're
was
like,
different. It was a different vibe.
you say like,
There's some
you know
there's some
that
old
that
crooks.
stuff I said earlier about being a dork when I grew up. Nah, I've been a player this whole time. I'm
I've been
lying
a
to you.
player this whole time. I don't know. It's like maybe I have that I just don't notice. I feel like a lot of charisma is very subconscious. Like you don't
Mm-hmm.
really I don't see people like actively go out of their way, especially me. I've never gone actively to go out and like learn how to be a charmer or have RIZZ
Yeah.
and build up my RIZZ to get any type of girl I want. It's like it's just being yourself. I think just being
Yes.
comfortable and understanding that pressure is okay. Having a little bit of anxiety is fine. You gotta use it to your advantage. Otherwise, it'll eat
Mm-hmm.
you alive. You gotta be careful with
Yeah.
that.
No, that's exactly it. It's I think the core difference is exactly what you said, about being yourself. It's having lived enough life, having enough experience in social settings to understand that, you know what? Like it's okay to just be comfortable with who I am,
Mhm.
I think about comedians a lot of time when we talk about charisma because their entire job is to make people laugh, right? So, if you think about that, like most comedians, they don't start off being just funny people. Now, I'm sure everybody's met somebody where like somebody is just so naturally funny that like they're not trying, but every time they open their mouth, like you just can't help but laugh. Like
Exactly.
we've all kind of encountered one or two people like that before, but
Right.
typically like comedians don't tend to be like that. It's a skill they've learned, and I think what sets them apart is not the fact that all of them are severely depressed, but rather the fact that they've come to terms with like sometimes in the pursuit of being yourself, you throw up a joke or two, and they don't always land, and that's okay.
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of times people are so scared to put themselves in a scenario where they're on display. Like if I make a really bad joke about something and nobody laughs, well, some people are so terrified of saying something they find funny or saying something that is personal to them and other people not appreciating that in the same way that like your family members or your buddies that you already have would appreciate. And I think that that's kind of that's like a bottleneck to being able to tap into like natural charisma. And when we're able to really tap into that understanding that being yourself is okay and that you can have your own view, your own opinions, and your own sense of humor. And that's not always going to land with people, but there's an audience somewhere, whether it's one person or a room full of people. I think that opens up that bottleneck and allows us to, be more comfortable. The most charismatic people, I think, are the ones that are the most comfortable in their skin, not because people accept them, but rather because they understand that it doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. I'm gonna say things that I think, and I'm gonna do things that I think, and as long as nobody else is hurt by those things, like me being myself is not being like, hey, Colin, thanks for getting on the call. You,
Damn,
it's
man, come on.
oh, yeah, I'm just being me. But
Yeah, yeah.
rather it's being like, okay, if I say, my opinion, like I really like Toyota Camrys, and you're like, I don't like Toyota Camrys. Well, I'm not gonna be like, oh damn, I really f- this one up, guys. Oh shit. I'm gonna be like, okay, maybe he likes Honda Civics or Hyundai Elantras, whatever.
You got me
That's
the
his
first
thing.
one. I do
You
like
know,
civics.
I like Civics too.
Yeah.
But but that doesn't harm my own self-image, like how I see myself,
Hmm.
because you don't like Toyota Camrys, right? So I have an opinion about something, and if you like it, great. If you don't, whatever. But some people are so mortified of that.
Yeah, I think it's like a level of vulnerability is the word I was thinking of,
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people don't have nowadays. Probably because, I mean, this is like a whole different topic, but with social media and just being on your phone for so long and like
Yes.
consuming stuff, like you're not socializing, so then you become more vulnerable. So then you don't like reach yourself out there and get a little embarrassing. Come on,
Mm-hmm.
like I used to not. No one knew that like I used to dance a little bit where I'd be at a party or something or like at a wedding
Yeah.
if I get a little tipsy, my feet start tapping. If the songs are hitting right, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna start breaking it out. I'm gonna start dancing.
Yeah,
And
gotta throw that
I've
boogie down.
I have surprised some people with that because they do not
Yes.
see me as that type of person. It's like you got to be a little embarrassing, even though it's goofy. It's still fun. You just gotta not care sometimes.
Yeah, that's it. And when you can surpass that, I imagine it's not going to take long before you find yourself, unlocking the character trait that is, charisma.
Yeah, it unlocks everything. It's great.
Just recently we were talking about how that can affect like relationships or putting yourself out there, like that type of thing. While it is a subconscious thing, like just constantly being okay in yourself, like it's not a conscious like I'm going to say this and then feel okay right afterwards, because you can't really control, I guess, saying something and people not feeling that. But you can practice like I'm going to say something and I'm going to be okay if it's uncomfortable, right? And then that goes from being a conscious effort that is draining to being a subconscious effort that is you being yourself. And I think a way that we can be proactive about that, and I say we is in like, whoever's watching this video, whatever audience is, here tuning in, is building relationships genuinely. Like if there's a kid sitting alone at a table, like go and talk to that person. Like be the big man that's going to say, hey, you're new here, let me give you the rundown. Or just be interested in somebody, like, hey, what do you like to do? What do are you into sports, you into games, you into cars, what is it? And I think that when we can get past a lot of superstition and stuff like that and actually go out and make a new relationship, sometimes you're going to say hello to somebody and they're just going to be standoffish and you just roll with the punches. Yeah, it feels weird and it kind of hurts your gut a little bit because you're like, dang, I was trying to be nice and they blew me off. But don't let that stop you. You got to roll with the punches from there and still build those relationships. One of my civics teachers was somebody that if you were to talk to anybody in the school, the synopsis was that people just did not like this teacher. I tried to remain kind of a unbiased third party and just, feel it out. She did have a very strict and assertive way of teaching her class. She would ask the class what their political stance on a particular law was. So they would bring up uncomfortable topics like abortion, LGBT plus rights and stuff like that. And, in the Deep South, people think that everybody's, hard red, but that's not true. It's about a good 50-50 mix.
Yeah, it's a good mix.
Especially in high school where everybody's like gathering these really intense political opinions.
Yeah, he's trying to get your brain open.
Yeah, and that's exactly what she was doing. When I tell you, this lady knew both sides of the argument better than the people who make the argument. Like, she would ask your opinion, and if you were bold enough to share, she would tear you to shreds. Like, I mean, it did not matter. You'd go up and you'd say, I like abortion. And she'd be like, well, what about all these things? And she'd lift everything to make you like doubt trusting abortion. And then somebody would be like, yeah, I agree with that. I agree. And then she would go straight to that person and she'd be like, okay, well, you agree with pro-life. Well, here's all the reasons this is terrible. And then she'd list everything about it that would make you pro-choice. And I really, really respected the knowledge of both sides of the argument, because for me, that was the moment I went, if I need to like form a really if I need to make a really informed opinion about something, this is a person I can rely on, right? Like a lot of people were standoffish because they were like, oh my gosh, my beliefs have been dismantled. And mine was like, holy shit, she just dismantled my entire belief system. I need this is a person I need to hold close to my chest, like keep your enemies close, like that type of thing.
I deem her as like as the real devil's advocate, because people don't like her, but she is very knowledgeable and picks, very good reasons to pick both sides.
Yeah, and then when you got past being offended because she was able to like whoop your ass in political debates, you understood that at the core of it, she's just trying to make sure that you were an educated American, right? Like you're going out and you're making informed decisions. You're not just, scrolling on Instagram, listening to influencers tell you who to vote for, and all this other kind of stuff. She's like, no, understand, the things that you're voting for. At the end of class, like every day, she always said, "Look, right after school, I've got like an after hours thing. I'm always here. Just come on in. If there's anything you're struggling with, you don't understand, or you just want to, talk through anything we've had in class, just come on over, sit with me for 15, 30 minutes, and we'll go through something until you understand it." There was one topic I just didn't even understand. I don't even remember what the topic was, but I was like, you know what? She has these, like, for lack of a better word, office hours. So I'm like, I'm going to go in. And I was the only student that entire year that came in after hours to discuss anything. And I must have went for like 3 days. It wasn't a lot. And when she saw me walk in, when I tell you the shock on this woman's face, she was like, what are you doing here? From there, like, it wasn't the combative, assertive teacher. It was, what are you misunderstanding? I'm going to explain it in every single way I can conceive until you get it. And no, it must have taken like 3 hours over the course of 3 days. So I was in there like an hour a day, going through this subject. And then in that 3 hours, I was able to communicate like where my headspace was in understanding certain civics topics. I was able to better articulate how I was understanding topics because she took the time to understand where my headset was and teach me those like verbal and written skills to like, okay, here's what you're trying to say. Here's the best way to say it. In her teaching me how to say what I was trying to say better, even if I didn't say it the best way, she knew points I was getting at because we had built that rapport. So then later, whenever I would come into that class, she was still assertive and demanding and would challenge, political opinions and all that kind of stuff. But when we had written answers on a test, she was able to give me grace because she could understand how my brain was comprehending topics because I had built that rapport. I had explained to her where my headspace was and she understood that better versus people who were like completely avoidant of her because they were like, I just don't like her personality. But if if she knows what you're trying to say a little better, like you go to her after hours or something, then maybe she'll give you a little bit of grace because she'll understand you better as an individual.
Yeah, that's huge. I feel like a lot of examples of charisma happen in the classroom, whether it's your peers or a teacher. And I got a great one for this one. I've learned a lot through college. I feel like more than my high school years, where your relationships with your professors are massive, depending on your grade. And one that I had this really weird path in math throughout college. I pretty much started at the very bottom because I didn't take this thing called an ALEX test where it determines where you get put in like your math subjects. So some people can start in calculus 2 and go from there. And I'm like, holy crap, you guys are smart. So I was like, all right, I'm skipping that. And I just was like, let me start at the bottom. And I go through all my, algebra. We took one that was called I can't remember. I remember the number. It was like 103, but it was a very basic, like almost probability class. And I was like, this is too easy. And by the time I get to calculus, I took it in high school, and I don't know how I passed calculus in high school. I had a terrible teacher. Very old guy. He came out of retirement after 10 years of retiring.
Whoa.
And he was not great. It was also like 7 in the morning when I had that class, so my brain isn't even functioning at that time of day. So I don't know how I passed that class, but I did. But I go back to college, about pretty much 4 years later. I'm taking calculus again. First day, full room. I mean, there's like maybe 40 students in here, packed. And the teacher's like, I have online videos if you want to go learn the lessons ahead of time, or you need more explaining. They're online, they're free, just go look at them. And yeah, you can use those to study if you want. Next day, we show up for that class. There's nobody's in the class. Everybody's gone.
Dang.
This was like right after COVID kind of got lifted, but also because just like the nature of college students, if they can do the least amount of work possible to get their grade, they will do it. And so I was like one of 3 people that would show up to every single class. Every time I would show up, it was an empty room. I'd maybe see like 2 people I recognized. One of them was actually a friend I made during that time. And I would show up because I was so self-conscious about my grades, and this is calculus, and I'm like, I sucked at calculus in high school. Let me like really focus up. And I feel like learning from a video, I have questions about specific things, that come up whenever you're doing like a math problem, and I'm like, I can't do that if I'm watching the video. I have to go in person. So we would pretty much do the same problems that he's doing in the video, maybe a couple extras to really get
Mhm.
like the math part down, like understand it clearer.
Yeah.
And it was great because I can ask questions. He was kind of hard to understand because he was very French and he had a mask on the whole time. So I would have to be like, "Can you repeat that, please?" But it was great because he would go into so much depth. This guy was so passionate about math. Super smart mathematician. He had like research papers. He showed us
Whoa.
about all the stuff he was doing. A lot of theoretical math, and through calculus, he made it so much easier. And
Yeah.
the problem with the kids that didn't show up to the classes, first of all, they weren't creating that relationship, like you said, with your teachers, which is huge.
Mhm.
The guy was friendly with me. He'd make jokes, even though they never landed almost all the time, but he'd make jokes. I was lucky because my friend that I made in that class was he also spoke French, so they would actually speak to each other.
Word.
Um, and I'm like, cool, I can actually like have someone else like carry that part of the conversation. Um, but the problem was his tests were no joke. So there was
Mm.
no homework in the entire class throughout the whole semester. You don't have to do any homework if you don't want to. It was just for practice. The only thing you were graded on were 4 tests.
Yep.
So you got one every quarter. And so the problem was if you miss a test, that 25% goes to the next test. So if you miss all of your tests, that you don't show up for a single one, your last, like your final, is all your grade. Whatever you get on that final
Jeez.
is your grade for the class. Some people actually did that. Some people showed up last day of class and first day of class, and they looked miserable. Like I saw so
Oh
many
yeah.
people with their heads down, panicking. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a tough test. The first 3 were actually probably the easiest because there were
Mhm.
multiple choice. There were problems we've done that are almost identical, maybe a couple numbers being switched around here or there.
Yeah.
So it was not that bad. But the last test was like, dude, he threw some curveballs in there. I didn't even think I finished. Um, but because I knew the guy, and because I spent so much time trying to understand like concepts that he's teaching, and try to do my best on this test. I didn't finish, but I had I had like 3 sheets of paper. I wrote all my like scratch work on, and I was like, this is the best I could do. I handed it in. I think I
I
got
love that.
maybe, I think I maybe got like an A minus in the class.
What?
And he's
Come
like,
on.
yeah, I was just like, are you serious? I didn't even finish the test. He's like, yeah, I saw all your work. You know, you showed up to all my classes. Um, I feel like you'll like when I was handing the test, he's like, I'm sure you'll do fine. And that kind of confidence, like if I wasn't there to build that relationship and get that
Yeah.
confidence to turn into my test and like do my test like as hard as I could, I don't think I would have maybe even passed the class. I maybe would have got my first C in college.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I was huge about grades. I was like, man,
Mhm.
I don't want to. This is not where I want to fall off
Yeah.
with math classes. But yeah, that was huge, and that sort of showing up was huge for a lot of things. I could talk about that all day. Whenever like my family, we've kind of split up a good bit. My family's starting to get kind of big.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for people to show up for certain things like weddings sometimes or graduation here or there. And I do my damnedest to just show up as much as I can because I know it matters to that person. Like I
Yeah.
would
It
like people to
does.
show up to my stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
But the fact that I don't know, it's just like it's almost like a will sort of where it's like if I show up, it means something to them, maybe more than I can understand, even if I'm not interested in it or it's not something I really care about. But it's the fact that I
Yeah.
show up for this person and I support them that it builds that charisma between each other.
Nail on the head. That's also a great thing to try and keep in mind is showing up for people as much as you can.
Yeah, I think participation is very underlooked. That's why it's graded almost throughout. I think like high school we got graded on participation because it
Yeah.
matters. And there's a video I want to make in the future where when the school for kids start coming back around, I want to make a video about making good grades. And one of the biggest things, this is kind of a spoiler, but one of the biggest things is showing up to the class. It's boring, it's redundant, but it's literally how you get through school. Like,
Yeah.
I promise you, there's nothing better than to show up. Even if you don't want to be there, no matter how bad, it's like going to the gym. No matter how bad you don't want to go to the gym, the end result, if you want to get to that, you know, be fit, you have to go. You can have a bad workout, you can have a bad school day. Just
Yeah.
go to it, and, you know, I think the good eventually through time, when you're done with it, outweighs the bad.
Yes, most definitely. All right. Well, if we go from showing up, I think showing up is also a big key factor to charisma. And let me phrase showing up. I also think that being present, you know, but like mentally present, because your
Hmm.
physical body can be there, but if you're withdrawn and taken away from different situations, that can actually sabotage, you know, what is kind of the end goal of having charisma. But I've got a buddy who asks fantastic follow-up questions. For him, it's almost like it's natural. Like, he will find the most interesting thing out of anything you say, and he will interrogate you about that. He looks you in the eye, and like, if you say, yeah, I've been, you know, moving furniture from here to there, he's like, oh, well, how much, what kind of furniture are you moving? Are you doing just small objects, or are you doing big objects? And it's like, this is a very uninteresting fact that I've just said. But he looks you in the eye and makes sure, and like, he asks intentional, directed questions about things that you've stated, which I think is a great skill, because like the majority of people today, when they talk, they say things that are happening with them, and they share information that's happening with them, but they end up talking about themselves, and then they wonder why like they can't like just keep on having a conversation with somebody. Typically I find it's because you don't reciprocate interest. You're not present for the other person's input. You're not present for the things that the other person is going through, right? So while it's one thing to like show up to these family events, if we just sit in the back during the wedding at the table that nobody's at, and then stay there until the wedding's over and then leave, but we never talk to anybody, nobody's going to remember that we were there. Nobody's going to say, oh, John and, you know, and his wife never sit around to like visit. They never show up to anything. But it's like, yeah, we do. We just sit in the back. And they're like, I didn't see you. But there's a difference between that and being present mentally.
Yeah, big time. It's called, there's a term for this. It's called active listening, and
Yes.
it's something my grandpa taught me without even like talking about it to me. Just the way he would listen to people, very intentional, would ask very deep questions about any subject. I mean, it could be small talk. You could be talking about like, yeah, moving out. Like, what did you move your stuff? You know, how much did it cost? Blah blah blah.
Right.
Small talk in itself is it's its own skill, and I feel like it shouldn't be looked down upon. I know a lot of people that don't like small talk, and it's like that's how you build conversations. That's how you meet people. That's how you just randomly get like a good joke out of somebody at the grocery
Yeah.
store. Like, you need small talk. It's not a necessity, you know, always, but for stuff that, yeah, being present, it shows that you're actually showing interest in what you're there for. It's almost more of a hindrance if you just show up and then don't say anything, because then you're looked at a little oddly. You know, people might be judging you and being like, hey, that is a little odd. You just showed up and didn't really say much, or, you know,
Yeah.
you mean open up a little bit about something. Which, I mean, that's, yeah, that could be taken different ways, but yeah, active listening is huge. And I picked it up from my grandpa hugely, because he had an ear for everything. I mean, if you want to talk about eavesdropping, this guy would eavesdrop like crazy. It might be a little I know eavesdropping has like a negative connotation, but I think it's more like a superpower, because whenever I would be joking with, let's say, my dad, and we're in the other room in the kitchen, you can hear us from a distance. My grandpa would be in like the living room, and I would make like a really bad joke, or I would make a statement to my dad, and then I'd hear my grandpa utter something in the other room, knowing that he's listening. I don't even have to see him to know that he's listening, and he's there. That's called being present, and
Yeah.
it's huge. I think whenever I talk to or like meet people for the first time, I have a new roommate now since I've moved, and he's got tons of friends, and I met a lot of them at this like gathering outside. They were having like a music venue thing at a restaurant, so it wasn't huge, but there was a lot of people there. And this guy knows tons of people, and I'm shaking all their hands. I'm like, hi, how's it going? and I would try to strike up conversations, and I'm actively listening to what people are talking about. I try to carry a conversation, and a lot of these people are like not very huge on going into depth about, back and forth, like a conversation that would carry itself. And I think you're kind of right. A good many people, especially nowadays, like to talk about themselves. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah.
natural, but you got to remember, hey, I'm talking to another person.
Yes.
Let's, like have an actual, let's go back and forth with each other. And I
Right.
found a lack of that through that group, that interaction. I was like, that's really interesting to see that in person.
Yeah. I think we're coming up on time here. I'm not going to hold you too much from your obligations that you've got to go to, but um, if anything, you just understand that charisma is not fake, and it's not a selective attribute, right? You can develop charisma by putting yourself in a position to build relationships and understanding, just like Colin said, there is that there is another person, on the end of that relationship. It's a two-way street, right? And when you're able to give people active attention, active listening, whenever you're putting in real effort to understand, hear a person, and then understand what they're saying to you, understand them, when you can care that much, that is how you consciously build charisma. And then once you've trained that to be a skill you don't even think about, that's when it becomes subconscious. It just takes that intentional effort to care about people and to want to put smiles on people's faces or want the best for somebody you don't know. It is something that I think everybody can achieve. Colin, thank you so much for joining me for this commentary. And, I hope to have you back here soon, but you've been just a delight to have a conversation with. Your experience is always charming, and I appreciate your insights so much, and I really hope to have you back soon.
Yeah, man, it's been a blast. This was great. You always have very constructed sentences to say that like strike me as so wise, and it's awesome to, relate with stuff that you say, and as you say, pin up your shirt.
Yeah.
It's flattering, and it's nice to know that there are other
Start
people out
undressing
there
on the
that
camera. Sorry.
Uh-oh. Let's
Anyway.
not get too okay. I can't compliment you too much, but it's been great. Thank you.
Yeah, don't make me too hot now.
Thanks for having me on. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so, okay, anybody that's watching right now, I want to give this to you now, and I want to invite you to reflect on your own stories here, and share down in the comments below just what's a moment that you earned somebody else's respect just by showing up and being yourself. What's a position you were able to put yourself in, or sometime you went out on a limb and it was a net positive experience that kindled a relationship you thought you wouldn't have. Let me know down in the comments below, and if you have any questions, you can always send them to bigjohn.submissions@yahoo.com, or you can leave a question down in the comments below. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.